probably most recognizable passages in the book of Proverbs. I'm going to read chapter 3, verses 5 through 7, and then we're going to go back and talk about it. For those of you who remember Teresa that used to come here, Teresa Marziel, who she's passed away, she would always say that this was one of her key verses. Every time I'd see her, she'd say, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding." Verse 5, "In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil." I think, mankind, one of the problems that we have, one of the things that betray our foolishness, if I could put it like that, is our great knowledge and understanding. Man is really a remarkable creature. God created us in his image. And when you think about and you look back in history and see the things that man has done, I just think, thousands of years ago they built pyramids. And they still can't figure out how they built them things. And they actually built them, I don't know if you've ever read this or not, but I've read it, that the 3 pyramids of Giza, they're actually built to resemble the 3 stars in Orion's belt. You know the constellation Orion, and there's 3 stars in his belt. They actually figured out how to place those pyramids in such a way to resemble or to show that those 3 stars in Orion's belt. And then there was when they built the Sphinx, which was like a lion said, it was facing a certain way. When you look back at places like Stonehenge, how many here have ever seen pictures of Stonehenge? It was actually like a big calendar. And every year, when the summer solstice and the winter solstice and the equinoxes, that sun would shine through two of them big pillars that they had that thing figured out like to the inch. And so you figure these men, they didn't have calculators and they didn't have computers and they didn't have, they didn't know all the laws of physics and so forth, but they were able to build these. They don't even know how they got them stones where they got them, because they were big and they didn't have cranes and they didn't have tractors and so forth. So it's really, mankind is an amazing being. We have they say this brain is just so full of capability and so full of information. Somebody says that we use on the average, about 5 to 10% of our brains. Some of us maybe more, some of us maybe a little bit less, but we have such a capability. If you're familiar with the term autistic savant, have you ever seen pictures of people who, for one reason or another, they're able to memorize phone books? And they can read a phone book and memorize every name and every number, but they don't know what day it is. They can't add 2 plus 2. Or a guy will sit down, they'll have an amazing ability in music. I saw one, they were talking about these kids one time, and this kid would sit down, and if he'd listen to a recording of a piano solo, he'd be able to play it note for note. After hearing it one time, he would hear it and just sit down and just play the thing. He didn't know how old he was. I mean, that's the capability. If we could tie all that stuff together, just imagine. Well, man is so brilliant. We've put people on the moon. We're sending rocket ships to Mars and landing them where we want to land them. I mean, that's pretty far, I'd be lucky if I shot a gun. I don't think I could hit a target to save my life. But they're hitting Mars, which is far. That's a long way off. So mankind is really just a phenomenal. Man is a phenomenal creature. Yet, because of his great knowledge and because of his great understanding and because of his great wisdom, sometimes he convinces himself that he's bigger than what he is or better than what he is. And sometimes his own wisdom is his own worst enemy. Instead of looking and trusting in the Lord, man has a tendency to believe that he can solve his own problems. And tonight we're going to read a little bit about what God has to say about our thoughts and our intents. Back there in verse 6 it says this: "In all thy ways acknowledge him." In your good ways, in your bad ways. With all of man's brilliance and man's ability, we still need to understand that there's a God who's greater than us. And we need to understand him in the things he tells us, the good things he tells us to do, and we need to understand the things he tells us not to do. Because we get in trouble when we do the things that God says don't do, and then we find ourselves saying, "Oh God." Anybody ever been there? Oh, God, why is this happening? He says, because you did what I told you not to do. Huh? Okay. So we want to look a little bit tonight at some passages.